Great. Well, you've definitely chosen the best Friday night to be here. I am really excited, and I'm looking at you guys because you've all done amazing stuff this year. And I can't wait to share and show some pictures. And not all the pictures are up, so if you want to have a sneaky peek at some other pictures, I've got my laptop, and there are some lovely ones afterwards. So I am excited to celebrate. And before we hear some stories, I guess I just wanted to share why we do this stuff and why it matters to us at Vineyard 53 that we are a church that values compassion and justice. And I'm sure we know it all, and I know that you guys looking around the room that you do know that, but I just wanted to remind ourselves why we're together. And we use the words compassion and justice a lot here, and sometimes the meanings get lost or misinterpreted. And I find myself, even the other day, sitting at the desk in the office going what does it actually mean to be compassionate? What does that mean? What does it look like to be compassionate? And I guess the root word of compassion means to suffer with and to be with someone in their suffering, or to be present with others in their pain. And justice, on the other hand, is when people are treated fairly and equally, and justice ensures that people are not abused or oppressed. And I don't know if you've heard the famous story that is sometimes talked about the man that sees a person drowning in the river and he pulls him out and is really thankful, but then sees another man drowning and then goes and gets him out and keeps going and gets all these people out because there's lots of people drowning in the river. And at some point, through the exhaustion and wondering why so many people are drowning, actually justice leads him upstream to see two men throwing people in the river, the source of the problem. And I guess my interpretation of that is compassion helps us to meet people in their suffering. It helps us to meet people and to attend to their needs. And then actually justice leads us to make the changes, to stop the things that cause the suffering in the first place. And I find that quite helpful to understand. You won't be surprised that God has a lot to say about both compassion and justice, and the concepts are so intimately connected in the Bible. Tim has a wonderful friend, who spent about 6 months cutting out verses from the Bible that talked about God's compassion and justice, or it referenced God's heart for those experiencing poverty or those suffering or in need. I wanted to borrow it for him, but obviously it's very precious because it took him 6 months to print it out, and there's hardly any of the Bible left. It's just nearly empty. To be precise, 1 in every 16 verses in the Bible concerns those that are poor, and that doesn't mean financially poor, although some of it is financially poor, but it includes the marginalised and those that are oppressed. And there's more than 2,000 passages that refer to poverty and injustice and God's deep concern for both. And when we read in the Old Testament, God's chosen people were Israel, and they were given numerous commands throughout in all the different books of the Bible in the Old Testament, numerous commands to care for the poor. And words like the widow and the orphan and the foreigner, and what they would do to care for them and show them justice. And in doing so and in caring for those, they were to show what God was like, and that was what they were called to do. And one of my favourite verses in the whole Bible, every time I read it, it just is yes, that's what I'm about. Isaiah, obviously written by Isaiah, he was a prophet about 500 years before Jesus, and he was calling the nation of Israel back to God. They weren't following as they should, and he writes that the Israelites were fasting and they were praying and they were asking God to do stuff, and God wasn't answering their prayers. And so Isaiah writes as a response of what God's saying, and it's in Isaiah 58, and it says, "Is not this the kind of fasting I've chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood." And it kind of goes on a bit and talks about what will happen when we do that, our light will break forth like the dawn. But then God says, "Then you will call and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help and he will say, 'Here I am.'" And again, if you do away with the yoke of oppression, the pointing finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness and your night will become like the noonday. I love that, and I could just read it every day. But in other words, like God is saying to them and to us, like when we look after the poor and when we look after the marginalised in our community, he will be close to us. And like no matter what worship and our tithes and our gifts to Jesus are kind of meaningless if we're not welcoming and serving those that are in need around us. And then in the New Testament, obviously we read about Jesus and his work. And in his ever first talk, we call it a talk, preach, when he was in the synagogue, and he starts by quoting the chapter from Isaiah 61, and when he opens the scroll and he reads it, and he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he's anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppression and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour." And then, like reading through the Gospels, you just see Jesus in every person that he meets. His life is marked by compassion. And when you're reading it, it just says repeatedly, like, Jesus had compassion on the crowds when he saw them. And that drove him to reach out to those in need and obviously healed them and forgave them. I think what I love most about the Gospels and what is so transformative for me when I read about what Jesus did is the fact that he broke down social barriers and he cut through class divides, and he met with people that were considered that you weren't supposed to meet with, and the class divides and the social barriers that were like endemic in his time. And the rich and the poor were considered equal to him, and he met with both. He hung out with women who were disregarded in that culture and context, and he touched those that were considered untouchable, like those with leprosy and the sick and the unclean. And I just love it that we can see that their lives are transformed when he welcomes people with love and forgiveness. So I love the Samaritan woman at the well. She's hated by the Jews and an outcast for her own people. And yet the whole community come to know Jesus because of how she was loved and accepted by him. And then Jesus embraces Zacchaeus, and he's a tax collector, equally despised by his whole community. And then he has an encounter up a tree with Jesus, and then he just says, "I'm going to make it all right." And he then does justice by making it right with all of those that he defrauded. Is that the word? Defrauded? Frauded? That one. And I often think when I'm out and about, I do often think, like, I wonder if Jesus was here now, where would he hang out? And would he hang out with the rich and the wealthy? And yes, he would. And of course he would, because he would be there. But he would also be with the drug dealers and the prostitutes and the physically and mentally unwell. He would be with those of us that feel on the edge and feel different. I do know he would definitely be hanging out at the Mulberry Centre with Boyd and the guys that are living in the temporary accommodation. I know that he'd be hanging out with the refugees. And he would also be in many of the pubs and the clubs, I'm sure, in Chester. Perhaps not drinking as much as everyone else, but he would be meeting people where they were at. And I am just reminded that as his followers, we are called to do the same. And we are called to love those around us. A couple of weeks ago, John and I were at a meeting with other churches in the city centre to talk about how we were going to respond to an influx of refugees that are coming to Chester. So it's become a city of sanctuary, and so lots more refugees are coming in from all across the world. Lots of different countries, even as we know today, are facing war and persecution, and so lots of people are moving into the city. There was an incredible Iranian gentleman who was there that shared some of his story, and he came to know Jesus in Iran, which is illegal, and the police found out and they came to arrest him. His mum called him and just said, "You can't come home," and so he's made his way across land from Iran and is here because he was going to die for his faith back there. But I think the thing that I was most struck by was that he said his faith was strengthened, as well as seeing many other Iranians around him in the UK, questioning their heritage and their beliefs, and many turning to Jesus because of the compassion and kindness that was shown by the Christians that he's met. And so there's lots of people that he knows from similar backgrounds that are like confused about why the Christians are so kind and why they're showing love and compassion, and ultimately coming to follow Jesus because of that. And I think I'm so encouraged to remember that Christianity spread like wildfire in the early church under Roman occupation because the Christians cared for the sick and the poor and those in need, and the Romans and Jews alike, and there was no them and us, they just cared for them. And people continue to come to know Jesus because of the extravagant generosity by his followers. And that story just really encouraged me, and that I will do everything and again 10 times over because of people coming to know Jesus. Another of my favourite verses is in Matthew 25, and it's a verse talking about what Jesus says to us when we meet him face to face. And it says, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was homeless and you gave me a room. I was shivering and you gave me clothes. I was sick and you stopped me. I was in prison and you came to me. And then the sheep says, Master, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you a drink? When did we ever see you sick or in prison? And then the king will say, I'm telling the solemn truth. Whenever you did one of these things to someone overlooked or ignored, that was me. You did it to me. That verse, I think, has helped me so many times over to understand, I think, why I feel more of God's presence when I'm meeting with those in need. And I think I just have come to the realization is because perhaps he's already there. And perhaps that's where he's waiting for us to join him. And I felt that myself. And yeah, I think serving and loving those in need with extravagant generosity will always be a high value for us here at B53. I think because in becoming like Jesus, we do what he did. And he invites us all to a life of compassion, not just to get involved in compassionate projects. And I really hate that term. I hate the term compassion projects because I think it loses the meaning of that. I think God invites us to live a life of compassion and generosity wherever we are, like sharing his love for others in our jobs, in our community, in our relationships. And I think it's when we treat people with significance, when we listen and when we really hear their story behind the appearance, when we accept and we don't judge, when we love regardless of the outcome, and when we speak up for those unable to speak for themselves, or when we welcome people with extravagant generosity and knowing that we're all equal before God because there's no them and us, it's us, and we're all before Jesus. And when we do that, we are showing God's love and compassion in practical ways. And God has invited us to partner with him in bringing healing and transformation to this world now. We don't just sing songs on Sunday and drink coffee, and that is good, and it's good to worship Jesus. But part of our worship is going out, and God is inviting us to a much bigger story of seeing his kingdom break in now, and seeing people's lives transformed, and seeing this world become a transformed place. I guess if we're serious about following Jesus and serious about deepening our relationship with him, there's an invitation to step up and step out and just to show his love without any agenda or expectation. I think especially to the marginalised and especially to the vulnerable. I long to see us as a community here at Vineyard 53 to be a people passionate about God's kingdom, powerfully at work in this region, showing his compassion and his justice. I want our church, this place, us as a people, to be known as a place where someone is welcomed, everyone is welcomed, outrageously and extravagantly, no matter what their background, no matter what their culture, no matter what their circumstance or ethnicity or their situation that they come from. That we would stand up for and alongside those that face oppression and the injustices like racism and abuse. And in doing so, I want to say, see God's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, as he asks us to pray. And I guess I just want to say, as we serve, we don't have all the solutions. and we definitely don't have all the resources. Jenny and I know that. We don't have all the resources at all. It's really messy and it's really complicated and it's really hard to make decisions sometimes. But I think the thing that I've come to learn is that God promises that he will meet us there when we step out, and that's why we keep doing that. I want to hear from some of you guys, thank you for sharing, those that are going to, about some of the small ways that we're starting to do this. And I do want to say small ways because I recognise it's just the start. Like, we are starting to serve the city and we're starting to see God at work and we're starting to see him at work, but it is just the start and we long for so much more. So, you know, I know there's only a couple of us here, but if God is prompting something in you, or you talk to someone else at church about wanting to see something, then we want to say a yes and an amen to all of that. So enough of me. We're going to start off with what I'm going to say, collectively called it Mimo, lovingly called it Mimo. Move in, move on. But we're gonna go with Mimo, aren't we, for now? So we're going to replay the video that we played at church, and actually we've updated all the numbers, so we've had loads more referrals since we did this, and I just thought it'd be good to watch. And then Jenny's going to come up and chat a little bit. Jenny, when you come up. Thank you. So what Jenny won't tell you is that she is my better half in doing Mimo in a wonderful way. I don't mind people, but practical organisation of skills is not my gift, is it? And I'm very thankful. So first of all, how did you get involved with Move In, Move On?
Well, you came to me.
And did what?
I suppose we'd had some conversations through COVID times about doing some bits, and the transition from sort of cooking for the homeless became, well, what do we do after they need something more? You know, they've got some house and other stuff, so we'd sort of had some bits and bobs going on there. And then at the beginning of the year, you were like, right, can you do a bit more?
So what do you do? Just briefly, what do you do?
What do we do? So we would, there's donations that we get from church or trying to source elsewhere. We get referrals from, support workers, social workers, doctors, to say someone's in desperate need and they need, here are some basic household essentials that we need. We will put together a pack for them of those bits, and then we take them to them and deliver them to them, which is where Tracy's strengths shine, because I'm much better on the organisation, less good with the people, but she is wonderful in that space.
You are good with people too, you just, so what have you enjoyed most?
I think it's great. I come out every time I've done a referral feeling like I've made a difference. So I've enjoyed that. I've been able to use my skills and be flexible with the times, which has suited me, to where we work for. So it's nice to feel I can sort of get behind something, move something forward, but something that makes a positive difference in people's lives.
Is there any story that you want to share? Is there anything that's really impacted you?
So we had a gentleman in the summer that I delivered to. We would normally go in pairs, but Tracy was off on sabbatical, so I had to then do these things by myself.
Which you were great at.
I'm perfectly able to hand a package over, but Tracy just gets into their lives and everything with them and comes out with all sorts. I'm like, oh, that's like me. Anyway, lovely gentleman, and it's funny how you see people who on the outside look absolutely fine. You know, shook my hand, had a really firm handshake and stuff, and a lot of people that we're dealing with have got some kind of physical or mental condition that's challenging, so can't work or you know, undergoing treatment or whatever it looks like. And for some of them, you can't see that when you see them. It's only you know that, or we would know that. But anyway, I gave him a microwave and all the household stuff, so bedding and towels. There's quite a lot to give him. And he's like, wait there, I've got something for you. And I go, oh no. So I hate moments, wishing Tracy's with me, going, I don't know what to do. And he comes out and he had, because you're thinking, well, what's he going to give me? He can't give me money. I'm like, I'm here because you haven't got anything. And so anyway, he comes back and he goes, I've got nothing to give. But he said, I used to work at Zurich Airport. And he goes, I've got 2 lanyards. That's all I have. But I want you to take one. Choose which one you want. And you start off with the no, card. And then at some point you're like, you're going to have to. But I was just so incredibly touched. And he reminded me of his kindness in that moment actually was of the widow who gave money when she had nothing. So she had nothing to give and she still put a couple of pence in. And to everyone else it looked like nothing. But for somebody he'd left because of war, so he literally had nothing. And then he gave us that. So we've
Yeah, and I think when you told me that story, I am just overwhelmed at there is no them and us, it is us, and so together that we serve and love each other, and he gave out of what he had. And so Jenny framed it today and it's going to go up on our wall, and it's just a memory of what it is to serve and to love. And thank you. And I've been to you, it's a heart shape which I love, so it's going to go up on our wall as a reminder. What have you, well, is there anything been challenging, or what have you learned about God or about yourself? You don't have to answer both.
I think it's helped me open my eyes and see everyone has a story, and we know that, but being reminded of that, it's so easy to be judgmental in the terms of you see somebody or you think, well, why are they there, or they shouldn't be in that situation, or why did you spend your money like that to get wherever, even if just briefly and subconsciously. And actually you see these people and they're so grateful when we've dropped stuff off. And I just think my eyes been open to what's going on in Chester. You know, I live quite a that's not my life, that's not my social circle and what I see every day. And actually there's so much there and so much poverty and, you know, and health issues and mental health issues and domestic abuse and challenges that's often just hidden away and brushed under the carpet. And I think someone said earlier about, wouldn't it be amazing if everyone in Chester was thriving? And you're like, wow, I mean, that's quite an achievement to get to, but how incredible would that be that we didn't have a need for the service and for what we're doing? And every time someone hears about it, it's like, oh my goodness, wow, that's amazing. We need your details and stuff, which is great, but at the same time, it's sad that there's this, you know, there's a need there.
Mm-hmm. So how can people pray? Although I put a list of how can people pray, so we can talk about that in a bit. Just practically, kind of things that we need. Anything that you wanted to ask for? A person. I mean, not practical things.
So yeah, I think our prayer, and I can't remember the verse that I had it today, but the prayer is that we will grow at the same point as the donations, so that we don't want a room, well, I do, but we don't want a room full of microwaves because we can't store them if we've got no one to give them to. But I don't want so many referrals that we don't have the budget to give it. So we're trying to do some more with some local organisations. I'm not sure they've been quite as forthcoming as we might like them to be at the moment. So we're going to work on sort of helping with that side of things. But it's, you know, the need out there is so big, it's unsustainable for everybody in church individually to manage to that. But just that it will grow all at the right speed. So we'll have the resources, we'll have what's needed and when. I think those are the main ones. I can't remember the verse that I had this morning, but it was along the lines of that kind of, if we invest and sow, then the harvest, will be big, and we will reap those. The blessings will be big for everybody. I think that's just we're trying to sow those seeds of, and I suppose that's about it.
Yeah, and
That's
if anyone
always great.
anyone really loves social media, please could you run an
yeah.
Instagram account for us so we put nice pictures on. I'm not very good at that, and don't have the energy for that. But if anyone wants to or knows anyone, I'm looking. Anyway, so thank you, and I want to practically thank Jenny, because that whole room is Jenny. If you look in there, the organisation. So thank you. Right, Boyd. Come here. Boyd is equally amazing, and thank you for all that you have done. Tell us about Mulberry Centre really quickly. What is it?
Mulberry Centre is a place for people who have found themselves homeless and need a place of temporary accommodation. So they've got a bunch of staff in there who do like activities and stuff like that, and support them with their emotional, social and physical needs.
Yeah. So we started something called Thursday Night Games, which was
Thursday night playing games. Video games, board games, eating cake, drinking tea, actually inviting people into
Yeah.
really casual and informal setting, isn't it?
Yeah. And how did you get involved?
I think you same as Tracy came
Did
up
I
to
ask
me and went,
you?
"Boy,
It might have been Tim. To be fair, it might have been Tim. Maybe.
someone came up to me."
Yeah.
And was like, "Do you want to get involved with helping out with some stuff?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." So then we went for a little chat with Laura, who runs a lot of their social stuff. Amazing woman.
Yeah, she's a member of staff with Four Features.
Yeah.
Isn't she? Yeah.
Had a little chat with her, and we were like, "Okay, let's start it."
What have you enjoyed most? What have you learned?
I walked in there one time and I was completely shocked. There was a guy about my own age, and I was like, wow, I didn't expect to see someone my own age. A lot of them are a bit older than me, like 30s, 40s, 50s, I don't know. But there was this guy that was 24, and I was like, wow, okay, I didn't expect it. Completely shocked me. So we had great chats with him every week. Really great guy. We had a good chat with him every week, and he got himself a job, which was amazing. We were all proud of him and celebrating with him. And then we had a young adults meal coming up, church, and someone was like, "Oh, we should invite him." I was like, "Yeah, great, let's do it." So we invited him along, and he came with us to the Calvary, and just kept asking questions about Jesus and faith and everything. And then at the end of the meal, as everyone was getting into their cars, he's like, "Can I come along to church?" We're like, "Yes, of course." Unfortunately, he had something came up, so he couldn't make it. But it's been amazing seeing like how he's grown through that, and how he's just kept going.
Yeah.
It's been so good.
So what is Mulberry Centre had a few. I mean, you can share what happened. It's fine. It's fine. And then explain what's happening.
I had a bit of a sewage leak, which meant sewage was leaking through the floors into people's rooms.
Oh,
So
yeah,
they had to
bless
close that pretty quick and get people into temporary accommodation.
him. Temporary accommodation.
Awful situation to be in.
Yeah.
But the staff were amazing, got everyone sorted. But unfortunately, that place is closed for quite a while.
Mhm.
They're hoping to redo their kitchen area, so there's more cooking space, more. So it's a bit nicer. So they thought, well, it's closed anyway, may as well do that now. So they're going to be working on that. And that means the Mulberry Centre will be closed. However, I assume this isn't it.
Yeah, go
Shouldn't
for it.
we?
Yeah.
Moving on to that.
Yeah.
However, they've opened up a new space on Crystalton Road, over there somewhere. And it's about half the size of the Mulberry in terms of rooms. But they've invited us to go in, have a look. I went in. It's quite a nice area. It's more homely, but a lot smaller. But yeah, we're going to start going in there on Thursdays and playing games, eating cake, drinking tea, see what happens.
And I think what you were saying is the aim is to just take God's love and be gentle and have fun and have laughter in a place where it's stressful and when you haven't got accommodation and it's not your own home. There's a lot of stuff going on that you guys just play normal, simple, wonderful games.
Just
and chat.
Uno most of the time.
Yeah.
Just
Uno.
lots of Uno.
Yeah.
I know the games.
I also want to celebrate Lizzie and Karen. I know you won't want me to celebrate, but I've just loved that you guys have just gone in and loved them and just been. Lizzie's quite competitive, isn't she? She's quite competitive
start
with the
getting
games.
through this.
Don't play games with Lizzie. But you have gone above and beyond of loving and of caring, and sometimes they get a bit grumpy, don't they? Life is always a bit tricky, isn't it? And you have loved them as any mum would, and just been there. And I guess I just want to say thank you for stepping out.
Pleasure. Yeah, it was a learning thing for me as well. But when you get a rapport between you and somebody else, it's great.
And you prayed for lots of
As
people,
long as I
haven't
win.
you? As long as you win. And I guess I also just want to celebrate Lizzie and Karen because they are now. I mean, goodness knows what's going to happen. All kingdom come is going to happen. They have agreed to be intercessors, haven't you, for when we start again, and so praying on those Thursday nights, and I just really value that and value the prayers, and thank you for that, for stepping out. So yeah, is there anything else you want to share?
Yeah. Give me a second. Yeah. So we've been going in every other Thursday, but from now on, well, for the first few weeks, we're going to carry on every other Thursday, starting on the 19th of October.
Mhm.
Is that next week?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's next week. That's okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
We're going to slowly split the team, so then we'll be going in every week. So I'll be going in 1 week, and then a guy called Chris, many of you know him, will go in the other week, and then me and Chris. So from their perspective, it'll look like we're going in every week. For us, it's still every other week.
Mhm.
And yeah, we need a few more people for team.
Mhm.
We need a few people to bake, because your amazing granddaughter's been baking for the Walkley Centre, and it's been incredible. But I can't ask her to do that every week, every single week. And more people praying, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Those three,
Yeah.
3 teams.
Yeah. And I think we just want to invite people into healthy relationship where you love and listen and play games competitively with them, but also invite into relationship with Jesus. And that would be our prayer, wouldn't it? That when people meet you guys and Jesus, that there is transformation and that there's that God's love can transform all situations and all trauma and all hurt and pain that so many of them experienced. And I'm so thankful for your presence there. So thank you. And if you do want to go every other or once a month or something, then please speak to you. Yeah, afterwards. Thank you. I can celebrate some wonderful volunteers again. But last August, as many of you know, Chester had a hotel that opened for Afghan refugees, and they were flown straight in from a refugee camp in Pakistan, and they were moved into the hotel in the middle of the night. In October, there was 300 men, women and children all in the hotel. The council kind of provided wraparound care, but had got to know that we were under the banner of Welcome Churches. So there's a national charity called Welcome Church, and they've got a website that you can sign on to, and you become a Welcome Church. And so it's kind of like a little underground network of churches that we refer to people, and then any refugee moving into the area, we get a little email saying this person's moved in. But because of that, they knew that we did some work with refugees, and they asked if we could go and support. And and so we went in and we've done sewings. For 6 months, was it? Maybe about 6 months, yeah. And we managed to get some funding. I'm super proud. I mean, Gary's the funding king, but I got one bid and I got it. So I was very impressed with that. We got some money, we bought some sewing machines, and so we were there. This is a little video from Beverly, who was helping on the team along with Lizzie and Karen and lots of other ladies also. There's some pictures that will come up, I think, at the end maybe. But anyway, this is a video of Beverly and just her reflections on what happened. Hi, I am here with my very special friend Beverly, who has been taking a lead role in a project that we've been doing recently with some wonderful Afghan ladies that have been living in a hotel. They came as refugees about a year ago, and we've been working on Fridays with them doing a sewing project. And so I have got Beverly here just to get some of her reflections.
You asked me. I really want to answer you because it's something I enjoy doing. Obviously, I could give you a long list of what you needed to run a sewing project, but I didn't just do that. I volunteered to actually get a lot of them. It was a shock. I went home and I watched the Escape from Kabul documentary that the Americans did, which was horrendous. So the following week, I went back with a very different idea of, well, clear idea of the situation that they'd come through. And therefore, it no longer mattered to me how much they took or what they took. I was just pleased that they had that opportunity to do it. These were now becoming friends. They were becoming people that smiled when they saw you rather than just walked in the room. Okay, they still had things that they wanted, but it was less aggressively asked for. It was much gentler. And you began to see they weren't a whole load of ladies, they were individuals.
Creations were incredible,
Yes,
weren't they?
yes, yes. Quite a mixture of just need an everyday dress or trousers to clearly special occasion wear. I think the realisation of how much it was two-way, because you start a project assuming you are in charge and are going to carry a project through, and quite quickly, I'm not sure how many weeks in, but when I always called her seamstress because I'm so bad with names and remembering, and when she had a group of ladies round a large table while she taught them how to do cutting out of fabric and how to make the clothes they wanted. She also taught me so much. I wanted to feel at the end of working with them, because it is coming to the end, there will be less opportunity, if at all, to meet them, is that in the future, if they have problems with how they're treated and how they settle in, that they will always remember our group and how we spoke to them, how we treated them, where we came from, and why we did it. And we'll think, yes, but there were these Christians, or these people from Welcome Church, whatever they remember, that they remember that not everybody is the same.
I still get quite a few messages from the ladies that have moved. The hotel shut in August this year, and they have been dispersed, some in quite awful ways, but there are 8 families that are still here and have been rehoused. They stayed at the same school, and the school has contacted to say, please come back. They're desperate to meet with us again and to continue sewing and to continue that relationship. And so Jenny and I are actually meeting with another charity on Tuesday about potential places and spaces to kind of do that sewing group again, or just like women connecting really. And so there is definitely more to go with that. There are some exciting things happening and starting, and I'm going to hand over to Gary because it's new and he is going to come. I'm going to cut first to start.
Oh.
And you can tell us all about it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is a project called Street Angels Chester, which isn't happening yet, but it will be very soon. Tracy asked me to do it.
I did it.
Yeah.
I did it. This is one I did it.
No, this is one where she didn't ask me, but she would have done if she wasn't on sabbatical. John asked me instead. No, but yeah. So this is a new project. You'll see lots of volunteers that we haven't recruited in Chester, but they are volunteers, but in a different area. So far, we've got a logo up there, purple, because of something linked to purple flag, and also the Chester city manager loves the colour purple, as well. You don't want to mess with him. But basically, Street Angels is that. Basically, the church and the community coming together to serve and help communities to be safer and stronger. So that's what Street Angels is. The reason it's called Chester is because there's about 100 of them scattered all over the country. And we've got an opportunity in Chester to set it up here. So in Cheshire, we've got one in Nantwich and one in Macclesfield. Sorry, if you skip back one, I'll just tell you quickly. Street Angels is got an umbrella organisation that looks after it, if you like, to help it kind of morph up in flexible ways all over the country. A company called Rock Angels, and they've got an umbrella kind of suite of angel initiatives. So one of them is Festival Angels. So Graham and myself, we went off to headbang a little bit, I think, didn't we? In between the gaps, but basically it was serving festival goers. They do club angels, so night clubbing. If you're all into that, then you might want to get into that side of things. Street Angels is really something that's come about off the back of that guy. His name is Paul Blakey. He set up the first Street Angels about 18 years ago in November, 25th in fact. So that will be 1 week. It'll be after that date. It'll be the 18th birthday. After that will be our kind of first walk around Chester, hopefully. But he set up in Halifax off the back of their challenge, their vision to try and take away this name of being the Wild West of West Yorkshire. So they set up a safe space in Halifax, and they had 50 volunteers that suddenly showed up, and they thought, we can't have 50 volunteers serving coffee, So they ended up going throughout the streets then at that point. So that was how Street Angels was born, as an initiative, and then other people caught that vision as well, and it sprouted up in different places. So that's that. So yeah, if you flick on, just to give you a sense of why it might be needed in the city. You'll know, you might know that there was something called street pastures. There is something called street pastures, don't get me wrong, in lots of places around the UK as well. But it was running for about 10 years in Chester, up until COVID time, and then it folded. So that was really sad that happened, and there's this kind of unique opportunity, if you like, for this project to sprout up. So I've just given you a little kind of, this is the latest stats on crime. Actually, it's pretty, I'm trying to kind of woo a few of you into being volunteers. When some of this reading is pretty grim, but compared to some cities, it's actually pretty good. Actually, but you'll see. This project will be serving Chester City Centre here, and you can see that in the month of August 2023, there were 292 crimes in the nighttime and evening economy. So the top one there is violence and sexual offences of 90, antisocial behaviour of 54, and shoplifting of 49, and then other crimes of 99. So that's just 1 month. You can, if you do go to that link, then you can have a good old play, and you can zoom into streets and all sorts of things. So you know which streets to avoid if you don't really want to get into that. But that kind of gives you a bit of a sense check of the sorts of interventions or problems you might come across as you're wandering around trying to serve people in the community in the nighttime economy. So some people might be drunk, some people might be lost, some people might have suffered, been a victim of a crime, etc. So that's that. So I just wanted to point out a couple of key partners or organisations that are linked to this that have kind of made this an opportunity for us to get involved in. I wanted to say as well that this isn't a V53 initiative as such. It's really a Churches Together thing that we've got a unique opportunity to lead, I suppose, and just pilot and try it out, see how it goes. Okay, so you got Safer Streets. They funded us some money off the back of writing a little application. So I'm not the king of funders, by the way. You know, definitely not. But definitely a God-given thing for sure. And yeah, what it's done is it's called Safer Streets. That's basically a £15 million campaign across the country, which is given to police forces to roll that out then on a grassroots level. And that has been funding things like what's called a Safer Street van, which has been manned by police officers and other people, but not volunteers particularly. And that's still running at the moment. They've been running training, and they've got an app running that you can signpost to, things like that. So they funded the pilot, which is what this is.